The uncertainty is over, but the wait goes on. After months of speculation, the Premier has set Saturday, March the 24th for the state election. But that's still 8.5 weeks away, and the government won't go into caretaker mode until late next month. Here's political reporter Chris O'Brien.
It was already going to be an unusual election. Now it's historic.
I intend to call the 2012 state election for Saturday the 24th of March.
In a rare move, the election date has been announced before the campaign officially begins. The Premier has granted the floods inquiry an extension to mid-March, and she wants voters to see the final report before the election. The inquiry is holding more hearings to examine claims in the Australian newspaper that Ivanhoe Dam was mismanaged before last year's flood.
Well, clearly, this will be a very controversial thing to land in the middle of an election campaign.
This is about raw politics for the Australian Labor Party, not about the best interests of the people of Queensland.
Adding to the upheaval, the Premier has postponed the local government elections from the 31st of March until the 28th of April.
I think that voters would rightly feel cheated if they voted for a candidate who they subsequently found to be the subject of an adverse finding.
The government won't go into caretaker mode until 5 weeks before the election because the Premier says any longer than that wouldn't be in Queensland's interest. But in reality, a 60-day campaign started today. And after 5 terms in government, Labor has an uphill battle.
I understand that I'm in for the fight of my life and I intend to give it that. Queensland is worth fighting for. I don't believe that Campbell Newman is the right person to lead this state.
Now, the LNP have a vision to take this state forward. We want to put Queensland back on track. It is time for a change.
The ABC's election analyst Anthony Green says the LNP is clearly ahead in the polls.
They've now got 2 months to really bed down the lead in the opinion polls and to avoid a comeback, which is what Labor's done at previous elections.
8.5 weeks until decision time. Chris O'Brien, ABC News.
And political reporter Chris O'Brien joins us now from Parliament House. Chris, Campbell Newman wanted an election, now he's got one.
He has indeed, David. The LNP's own election countdown clock nominated March 24th, and that's exactly what's going to happen. But Campbell Newman is cranky that the Premier hasn't gone into caretaker mode yet. He says that gives Labor a governmental advantage for the 3.5 weeks of the pre-campaign campaign. But as the Premier says, it would be a bit weird to be in caretaker mode for 8.5 weeks. And anyway, this way, the LNP gets another sitting of Parliament next month to get stuck into the government before the writs are issued.
And Chris, what are the polls showing for Anna Bligh and Campbell Newman?
They show that this election is there for the LNP's taking. A news poll and Galaxy regularly now have the LNP more than 10 points ahead on a 2-party preferred basis. That sort of result would decimate Labor's 51 seats. But don't forget, Katter's Australia Party is in the mix too, and we'll all be watching with fascination to see what happens in the seat of Ashgrove. Campbell Newman has to win a seat, which he's favoured to do, but you never know.
Now, why the extension for the flood inquiry? What are the extra investigations?
Well, David, the Australian newspaper says it's uncovered evidence not only that Ivanhoe Dam was mismanaged during the floods last year, but that efforts were made to cover that up. So that's what the inquiry is going to look into. That's why it's dragging on longer than intended. And of course, any adverse findings that may or may not come down in the middle of the campaign will be very interesting fodder indeed. David.
Thanks, Chris. Chris O'Brien there at Parliament House. And